get going. My name is Andy Davis. I am in your folly, your chair. I'm from Astoria. I'm a data analyst. I'd like to go around the room and do introductions quickly so that everyone can get reacquainted, or new members and know the rest of the group. Welcome. Harold, do you want to start?
Sure. Harold Naval, Gearhart, retired dentist, 45 years, president of General Dental, Astoria, Arizona, Arizona, Oregon, Washington for that period of time. A fair amount of experience in health insurance, overseeing things. Volunteered at the Job Corps for 7 years here in Astoria, Tunapuna. And enjoy being semi-retired. I'm the sharpening dock to Repair Cafe. If you've been there on a Wednesday, you've enjoyed what we do to hopefully restore your garden tools, keep things out of the landfill. We're working on a little more than 1 ton in the last 2 years.
Thank you. Thank you.
Gail Henderson, Clatsop County Community Development.
Hi, Gail. Mine's Todd Lundy, and Theodore by spanking name. And I'm an architect. I have practiced in New York City as an intern, taught college, taught architecture school for 11 years, and worked for Kaiser Permanente as a project manager in Portland. And that's me.
And Todd, you represent one of the areas.
Oh yeah, I represent the southwest coastal area, a little teeny sliver of land down there.
We're doing introductions.
And am I late?
No.
I'm Andrea Mazzarella.
Hi.
Hi. I am, what am I representing? The Lewis and Clark Olney Waleski sector, which is where I grew up.
We actually have 2 representatives from that group here today.
Yes.
They're going to be taking turns.
We're a
on and
team.
off.
We're a team. We're a great team.
Cheryl Johnson, I am the Northeast CAC person. I live in Brownsmead. I've lived there since 1976. And it's fun and interesting to note that I was one of the folks in the county who helped work on the original one back in the 70s. So it's fun now to be here and to see it through again. I'm a retired library media specialist. I was at the Astoria Middle School for a long time, and then in a number of other schools.
I'm Robert Strickland. I live on Clatsop Plains, and I'm kind of one of those unemployable people who therefore becomes an entrepreneur. So I have excessively broad interests and excessively low institutional knowledge of the county, and don't enjoy being a gadfly. Okay, anyway, hi. Yeah.
I'm Jan Mitchell. I live in Astoria. I'm one of the 5 people who got blessed to be here. I worked for 5 years as a city planner. Here I returned to my social worker roots and did a lot of voluntary social service kind of things, and worked somewhat as an instigator and not for planning and I've been here for 25 years, which makes me almost an historian.
Well, good. That starts me out well. I'm Jim Coughlin. I also come from the Lewis and Clark Waleski. Yeah. And my background is as a general contractor. I spent 28 years here in Astoria working as a general contractor. And during that time, I spent 7 years on the State Structures Code Board, which was a very interesting thing to get Oregon on board with the International Building Code. And then I was on that board as an environmental member. So I slipped into the state energy board as well at the time. But I retired 8 years ago, and I just wanted to make myself available. I'm probably going to learn much more than I can add to a discussion, but that's why I'm here.
I'm Pat Corcoran. I work for In-State University and Oregon Sea Grant. Coastal hazards is my area. I live in Astoria, on Park Avenue, overlooking Deans Bay, out over your valley. Let's see, I've been in a couple other planning projects. One was the North Clatsop Plains redo in about 2010 maybe, or something like that, and also a tsunami hazard overlay zone in town just a few years later. And currently serve on the Astoria Planning Commission. I almost devoted myself there.
Thank you all. If the members of the public are interested in introducing yourself, we welcome comments sort of throughout these proceedings to try and get as much public input as we can. We're happy you're here, and we'd love to hear who you are and where you're from.
Sure. My name is Tito Montero. I'm a Seaside City Councilor. I've lived in the area in Clatsop County for close to 18 years. I have close to 30 years experience in healthcare and health plan administration. I've served on several boards in the county, currently the Coastal Theater, Sunset Empire Transportation, Seaside Museum. I have a variety of interests. I've been a business person in downtown Seaside, and also 7 or 8 years at Countywide CAC. And currently also have a small part-time job with the Census Bureau.
I'm Nancy Kerber. I've been in Astoria for almost 4 years. 3 of those were as the city planner with the city of Astoria, and now coastal planner just across the street with the Columbia River Astoria Study Task Force. So I might be helping out later on in the process for those issues. That other process and you guys are doing work.
I'm Leslie Payne. I'm a guest of Chairman Chills. I'm here from Fresno, where it was 108 today.
Good racing weather.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
I'm Chris Farrar. I, among other things, serve on the Clatsop County Planning Commission along with Robert, which I think you didn't even mention that day. I also was elected to the Clatsop Soil and Water Conservation Board this last November, and I'm also a member of the North Coast Watershed Association. My background is I'm retired now from 37 years with the U.S. Geological Survey, geology and hydrology.
What about Lake Tahoe?
Lake Tahoe. Lived there for 19 years. Never owned a slope or snow plow out my hand shovel in the driveway. And kept me issues.
Weren't you in charge of water quality or something like that?
No, that was the frustrating thing. There was a lake with 122 million acre-feet of water enough to cover the state of California 15 inches deep. And I never had work on it. I mostly worked in the Mammoth Lakes area, Napa counties, Sonoma County, and San Juan County. Not too bad a stint on the coastal.
How many feet of clarity was there in the lake when you were there?
Oh, it was changing a lot. It was sort of around 60 feet, I think. But, yeah, big issue there is clarity. I think we were too focused on that one issue. And it's kind of a harbinger of what may happen to the lake. But there's a lot of issues there, a lot of invasive species issues. And wetland filling, they filled in the South Tahoe Keys. It was a huge wetland area. Totally destroyed that, made it a place for wealthy homes with boats and docks and things. All of the kind of issues that could happen here in our county.
have
Thank you for joining us, Chris. Okay, so the next item for us on our agenda, and now we're still a minute behind, is to review the summary from last meeting. Did everyone get a chance to go over those notes? Any additions, corrections, thoughts?
I thought I had them, but I couldn't find them, but I wanted to have them in my hand.
Here's a set.
But I know I've read them, because I was in there.
Especially enjoyed the summaries of the two presenters.
And your,
Yep.
the handout is actually attached
Yeah.
to the summary.
And I have read them, I just gone over it.
Harold, did you want to,
I'll get this already, so I'm fine.
I just wanted to make sure everyone heard your comments or comment on the,
Well, I'll say it again. I really like the idea. There's something that went along with this. Two presenters
I can get it.
last time, and their support information, some slide presentations. I thought that was a very nice summary. I like that. Thank you. Any other, we'll put that together.
I forwarded those slides today to somebody who was interested in Hispanic issues in Classic County. And so it's already the virtuous cycle spinning around and around.
that's great.
That's okay.
Any other comments or corrections? Thank you, Gail, for putting those together. Okay, so we have space here for reports from the subunits, the CAC liaisons from the different areas in the county. This is really the first time that we've done this segment, so we're sort of feeling as we go here. But we would love to hear what has been discussed, what's come out of the committees, and what we should consider here, especially since we're about ready to move on to Goal 2, but we'd like to have more discussion about Goal 1 if appropriate. So I don't know where we want to start. Andrea, Jim, you're both the closest on one side of me, so how about we start with your area?
Sure. We just had one meeting so far, our little subsection, and we mostly just kind of familiarized ourselves with the paperwork that we had at the time and got appointed a chairperson of our group and appointed ourselves as the liaisons and decided we would try to make sure that our meetings are in the evening when people that work regular jobs can attend, because that being accessible to the public piece, often that's the big challenge. And decided to try to make it kind of fun and have a potluck and hang out and try to enjoy the process. That was kind of the main discussion, right?
It was.
Okay.
One thing that I was impressed with was that this young lady is the youngest in our group. And I find that a little hard to understand why there aren't a few more young that are interested, but talk to them. Good ideas.
Time and money.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, when you're reacted, when they have expressed interest in that, shown an interest in, instead of 28-year-old being appointed to the planning commission, it's 75-year-old.
I have applied for the planning commission 6 times, still not gotten chosen. But I did get on the city budget committee, so.
Not the same.
I weaseled my way in there hard enough. It does take some determination, I think.
And your next meeting is next Thursday at 5 p.m., and that's at the fairground.
Yes.
For anybody who's interested.
Robert?
I would like Gail to help me remember what the hell we did. I know what we did for next month. And that is put it off till the following month. accelerated. We just need to slow down and rejoin what do we call it in a bike race?
Peloton.
Yeah, Peloton. What did we do besides praise ourselves for the nice meeting we had the time before with a representative of the
Yes, well, you spoke a lot about park policy and public lands and how that.
and Roger Dorban came from the public and wondered, what are we doing about climate change? So we had a little bit of discussion that bounced off of that. Pamela was there, and Roger, I think, was thinking, well, gee, like the place where we were, it looked like it could have some trees planted. And it brought to mind that we had, I didn't know at the time, but we have 470 county-owned parcels, county-owned tax lots. That, you know, and what the official things you know, I heard expressed was that some of these are only 2.5 acres and they're too small to do it, and, you know, to really provide the stewardship. They're not big enough for a park. And this was also, you know, the same attitude from long ago that we can't take care of what we have, so we don't want, surely don't want any more, that we will hire a property manager to sell this off and get it back on the tax rolls. And I guess I have wished that at least in that group that's about selling them off, that there's someone who represents things that don't really agree that the fact there's no public access to some of these lots doesn't really much matter. They're one of the members of the group, Diana Hines, is on Smith Lake, and she marvels at how much wildlife exists on her 2 acres. And yet I know across the lake was the Solomon Smith little county-owned site, which was to the recreational lands, kind of a too small to do anything with. But wildlife doesn't really care. It doesn't need a road there. It doesn't need to have someone checking out as any homeless person occupying it. You know, but it turned out I was surprised at how much it's a monetary issue, not a ecological issue. You know, where we own wildlife-rich pocket. You know, and I didn't go look at these 470. One would include where we're sitting now. But it doesn't matter that they're isolated, half-acre, 2-acre, inaccessible, because they're accessible as hell to the eagles and the salamanders and the muskrats and a long list of things of no monetary value that aren't really out there advocating for development. You know, and yet the tone often seems that we want to purify all this land, get it back into highest economic use, which means typically clearing the brush, deforesting, you know, same as they did in Cannon Beach, where we need to cut all these leftover little forested wetland spots so you can build a box, a cube. Anyway, not all of that came into play, but that was what was going on in there, this little clash of values from people that we think of as being in the forefront of defending our county's natural richness. Mm-hmm. And yet I kind of went away really searching for names of anybody who really cared about muskrats, you know, who was representing those values. And my admired friend and colleague kind of said, well, you know, we've got to make choices. And that was the view of another person on the planning commission who was an ecologist. Hey, well, we're going to make some choices here. You got to pick and choose. You can't do everything. And I guess that's not my value system. I really try and think of what's the ideal here, which is better A or B, and then figure out a way to be better of those things, and not just say, well, what the hell, we'll make half of it in addition to the business park, and cut down 20,000 trees to start with and bulldoze it. And it's not our problem, it's Lawrence's problem. Or we have just advanced or whatever. Anyway. I was kind of a little shocked. You know, I couldn't think of any group in Clatsop County, active in Clatsop County, that would self-describe as an environmentalist organization.
Hey.
Name one.
Create.
Its focus is on what? When you look at its website.
Well, let's talk later. I have
Okay.
lots of ideas.
I know, but when you go to their website, they are very narrowly about things like LNG on the estuary. You know, they aren't about.
They're not counting.
They really aren't.
Well, let's talk. We can't get on.
Yeah, we can sometime, because that's a key topic. Because I had to go. I've never heard of Ridgefield Wildlife Refuge, 75 miles east along I-5. But it was surprised that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service seemed to be the most environmentally conscious entity. You know, and I was simply Googling Chinook Clatsop environmental, see what I come up with. And they have the most credible language of, you know, of anything that the cream that came to the surface. Well, I think we have a problem here that we for so long have been on the defensive about. You know, it's saying this, that on the Clatsop Plains plan that we're trying to make as much of the land natural. But it's always been a battle. And you wouldn't know it without reading it, what had been written by someone in the 70s. No one stands up. No, North Coast Land Security, whatever it's called, does not want to be known as an environmentalist organization, etc. So anyway, it's kind of fascinating to me that we may love the land, but we're scorched from years of not wanting to save the earth. Thank you.
Cheryl, you want to report from your group?
Yeah, so I'm northeast, so that's Napa, Swenson, all that section out there. Our membership, I think, is quite nice. There are 5 of us in it, and it's very diverse. One of the people on ours is Dirk Rohn, who was born and raised in Clatsop County and is second generation Clatsop County. I've been here for 40-some years, and the other 3 people on our group are all young people, which I'm very pleased about. And have moved here recently and chose to come and live here, and one of them is one of the people doing a new business. So I thought that was an interesting piece from our end. We've had good attendance and participation. There are a couple of people in our group who are inviting people or letting them know that it's happening, which I think is interesting. I think they're concerned about what we may do, and we may be too ecological, and that's why they think they should be there. But anyway, we're having good attendance, and at this last one, I looked around. There were sitting in that room 3 people who were former Clatsop County commissioners from our area, and I thought that was very interesting. Our planning commission person, Myrna Patrick, was there, and I'm surprised it's not here today. She's been attending almost all of these loyally. Pat came from this group, which I thought was awesome. So for us to visit each other's, I think it's a nice idea, and I hadn't thought of that until he showed up at ours. Hot topics in our end were communication. So goal 1 is public participation, and one of the things that came up was, how do you let people know when things are happening, like these kind of meetings?
Postcards.
That was, yes, he got it. That was the word of the day, postcards. So because we're rural, we talked about a lot of people don't subscribe to the paper. I do, a lot of folks don't. And we had the lack of fast and efficient computers wove itself in and out of that entire meeting over and over and over. And what we ended up with was saying that the county needs to send us postcards to let us know what's happening. And recently there was a land use hearing for the dollar store, and only the people in the very close neighborhood knew about it, and we would like for that area, that geographical area that gets notified, to be widened out. And right now there's another proposal out there. What is that called?
The Napa Pizza and Bar?
No.
Westport? Westport?
No, it's like asphalt.
Oh, the batch plant. Absidy.
The batch plant, there's a batch plant proposed, and there hasn't been a public hearing, but again, people want to be notified of that one. So postcards was the word of the day. We wanted to do old-fashioned, and then we asked the county to advocate on our behalf in all times and in all places for us to have some fast and reliable communications via computers out there.
Do we know what, because there's a required amount of distance that has to be notified of public hearing. And what is that?
It ranges between 250 feet to 750 feet, depending on what your zoning district is.
Is there a way to change that to just make it bigger?
Oh, yeah.
What do we do? How do we do it?
Well, once we reach a consensus, yeah, that's basically what's going to happen. Is once there's a consensus among all groups, then that is something that we can move forward with.
Okay. Because I think that came up in our group's conversation too. It's just not a big enough reach.
Come up in Classic Plains as well. And
it is an economic issue, I understand, but goal number 1 was public participation, so that's sort of where we went. And I think that's it.
And your next meeting is September 5th at 4 p.m. at the fire station.
Yes. Yeah, so we're meeting at the fire station, which is a cool place to meet. And we are meeting at 4, although they have it later when regular working people could come was a discussion, but we kept it at 4.
Todd, I'd like you to go, but I did want to ask Gail, do we have a budget for things like postcards?
We do have a budget. I don't know. It's all one kind of lump sum in my head right now, but out of special projects, we're pulling up between 45 and 55,000 is what we budgeted for the first year of the comp plan update.
Okay.
And we just looked at it today, and we're at about 2,000 right now since the beginning of July.
Do you know how much of that is already sort of earmarked for one thing or another? How much do we have that could be allocated to things like postcards?
I think if we budgeted 45, we spent about 2, we've got about 43,000 left.
That's a lot of postcards. Okay.
That goes for 3 years.
No,
That's
that's this fiscal year, and then we pull pretty much the same amount out next fiscal year. It's a 3.5 fiscal year process. So I think the entire budget is about 115,000.
The distance you cited, 750 feet, whatever, if we look at these areas and look at a designated size and look at the population you divide by that, you have to come up with a better figure to get this. In other words, I live in a fairly dense area on Little Beach. There are 22 houses there. There are only 5 of us that are full-time residents, and everybody has another house in another city or another country. And so things aren't necessarily applicable. I think those would fit in more rural, a residential area, but not necessarily for the ones you're talking about. So if you're 900 feet and they go to 750, you might not get the announcement. That's what I mean.
We're kind of like a biplane pulling a banner. Work better in the rural areas.
I mean, one thing that could be an interesting possibility, you know, the county's got GIS professionals on staff now. We could probably do nearest 100 neighbors or something.
I like that.
That would take a distance. We could revise the law to take distance out of it.
Perfect. I think that's a more equitable way because we've got diverse areas here, so.
I'm just wondering, does old-fashioned things like putting up a flyer in the local grocery store or that kind of thing, do people notice? I mean, I notice here in Astoria, but.
Yeah, and I've appreciated the county make posters that are colorful and bright, at least, you know, for their meetings, so.
And I
yeah.
took one of those down to Sunset Beach to what used to be the Atkins store, the only store down there. They were happy to put it up, but have no idea if anyone looked at it.
I don't know if you take questions from the audience.
Sure.
You guys are talking about advertising, trying to get more people to meetings.
Yeah.
I thought was,
Introduce yourself
oh, I'm sorry, Captain Sullivan, County Commissioner.
from my area.
Yes, District 4.
Yeah, I claim it.
Fantastic District 4.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, not everybody knows what a comprehensive plan is. And so, when I sent out the few emails that I sent out, it's like, do you, I mean, like, how can we put some questions in, like, do you want to protect your agricultural land? What if you live next to a forest? Is there any the questions that affect their lives that would maybe pique their interest? Do you want to have a smaller lot? Do you want to divide your plot up so your mother can live in the back half of the acre? Those are some of the questions that you all are dealing with, correct?
What do you think about what you want things to be 20 years from now?
Yeah.
A curious thing that I just read in this today in the community plan was ostensibly every year there would be a county meeting where individual property owners could say what they wanted to happen to their property. You know, this is kind of, I've never heard of this, but it's in plain print that there was room in the community plan for an individual property owner on an advertised occasion, all to come, staff would gather up all the information, but you didn't have to wait 2 years for a comprehensive plan review. It was any time you wanted to see something happen. Back when this was written, it was intended that every year
They do.
there was a specific advertised opportunity for any individual, any group, but any individual in the county that could come and make their plea for the plan to change with respect to their individual county property. And I'd never been aware of that.
Mr. Lundy hasn't spoken yet, but when he gets done, if we had a little bit of time, I would loop back to what Kathleen had said.
Okay, this was our second meeting. Our first one was a kind of a meet and greet sort of thing and get to know one another. However, most of us did already know one another, as we all but one were on the Southwest Coastal Planning and Advisory Committee that was disbanded a couple of years ago. So that particular set of interests did color a great deal of what happened in our meeting. We stuck pretty much with the cheat sheet that the county put out, trying to get some solid work done, and rewrote each of these goals has a policy associated with it, and we rewrote the policies. Most of them are subtly changed, some are drastically changed. The essence of what we came up with is a system which is more locally based. It won't surprise you that the Southwest County group would like to see reinstating the local county citizen advisory committees. And those would feed into a committee much as we are, a a Citizens Advisory Committee, but county-wide. And then this committee would feed into the Planning Commission, and so on. And of course, the staff would be involved in all of this. But so with that in mind, allow me to read we came up with 9 policy statements. Would it be appropriate for me to go through them, or is that going to be too much?
If you want to provide me with a copy, I can put them with the meeting summary.
What I would like to do is just get the essence of them, because I'm sure what happened was the meeting was almost 4 hours long, and we really got down to brass tacks and put these statements together at the very end. And while notes were taken, they aren't consistent. And I spent the morning going through the tape and trying the audio record of it, and put together as best I could the actual motions that were put before the board. However, because of the pressure on us to get things done and the many amendments and so on to these motions, they're probably not what the committee is going to want to stick with. So I did send a copy to Ian and of the whole thing together with footnotes, and I would like to have our committee have a chance to review these and revise them before I make them some kind of a public declaration of what the committee would like to see done. But you have now the essence of what. So let me just read some of these and see. I'll do it quickly. Goal 1, citizen involvement. The independent county-wide Citizens Advisory Committee shall consist of 6 members. The committee shall strive to represent the affected citizens of the 6 planning districts, each member to be selected by the residents of each of the 6 planning areas. No more than 2 may be members of an incorporated city. Policy number 2, communication. Regional Citizens Advisory Committees are to submit their comments, suggestions, and recommendations to the County-wide Citizen Advisory Committee. It would be our kind of a group. And then their recommendations would go to the County Planning Commission. Policy 3, citizen influence. The advisory committee of each of the local planning areas may submit their recommendation to the County Citizen Advisory Committee, which will make recommendation to the Clatsop County Planning Department, and so on. These bodies shall answer the questions, comments of local citizen advisory committees in a timely manner. Now you see the consistency in this. It's always got this same structure. Let's see if I can just skip the others. Well, on technical, the policy 4 is technical information. The Board of Commissioners, through the Planning Department, should provide adequate and reasonable financial support. Technical assistance shall be available and presented in a simplified form, understandable. These are almost the same as understandable for effective use and application. Some of these are just about exactly what's in this document. I'll skip the ones that are pretty much the same. Policy 7 gets to this communication issue. The county shall use the county website, news media, mailings, and meetings, and other locally available means of communicate all planning information to the citizens and governmental agencies prior to public hearings regarding major plan revision, and these notices shall be publicized. And let's see. There was, I don't think in these statements, there were several ideas bandied about that we did not get in our proposals, and that's why I think we need to rewrite them or rework them. One was that citizens need to be able to respond to all levels of planning decisions, including type 1 over-the-counter, by given some opportunity to know what's coming and say maybe have a week, or I guess a week would be what was asked, to respond. And thinking about what you all are talking about, those persons that are interested could register with the planning department with their email address, so that this could just be a distribution list from email, and that all of these things would be put on the website so that they'd be available to those that are somewhat savvy to get on the website. The mailing meeting notices and so on, spreading the area might be financially challenging for the county. Yes.
Question. So if I came in for an electrical permit to the building department, which is typically issued over the counter, you would want a 7 to 10 day comment period for residents to be able to comment on my electrical permit?
That's a refinement that we have not discussed, but is one that needs to be covered. There are interior changes that should not be included in this. But if it involves the exterior of the building, that's probably more what people were interested in.
So it sounds almost as if you're more concerned about design review.
Yes.
Okay.
I guess that would be right. It's exterior, cutting down trees, building a garage extension. There was examples such as the county, a type 1 may come in and not reveal things about a steep slope or a slide or a creek or a spring. And the local neighbor might know that and could inform the county of it. So it would be a way for the county to get more information about the projects they're considering. There was talk that this would only be permissible if these were type 2 reviews. And in that case, there would be a 10-day waiting period with a 12-day appeal period. And that would extend things out too much, probably. So there's some refinement needs to be done on this. I think I've hit on all of them except for this one. The idea that each of these planning areas, the 6 planning areas, would have a local planning committee, which we happen to have now because of this process, might not hold up. It didn't hold up last time. All but one maintained them, and the others fell to non-use, and therefore the county dropped them. So in that case, these members that would come to this committee, the central countywide committee, would be elected by some process from the local community. It could be the Grange or community club or some other local group would nominate a person to come to this committee. Everything else on the way up the line would be the same. I mean, planning commission would be nominated in the same way. Now, you might say this seems like a duplication of the planning commission, but it's not at all, because the planning commission, if you know now, there are at least 2 areas that don't have any representation on the planning commission, and the representation is decided by staff and by commissioners. I mean, ultimately by the commissioners. It's not a locally selected group. It isn't the local people having a voice in the planning, and that's what Goal 1 is after. So this is an opportunity to get Goal 1 fulfilled in the county. One other point that came up was that the county has the planning people at this table and the county lawyer, attorney. We don't have anybody representing the communities, the people that live in these communities. And perhaps there should be a table on this side of the room where the chairman of the countywide Citizens Involvement Committee or Citizens Advisory Committee would sit and represent the citizens' point of view on issues that come before the Planning Commission. This would be for the Planning Commission. Well, that's where we're coming from.
And just a point of clarification, we actually do not have land use council at the planning commission meetings.
Aha, okay, okay, that's just the county, okay.
I'd like to add the word kiosk to wherever the word postcards previously was. And I'm not trying to dump it all on the county technical audiovisual person, but it seems like a kiosk in various areas, information kiosk, where they had, it seemed like better than a 28-cent postcard, cost effective, but somehow providing internet accessibility. It's kind of put our minds hard to work. How can we improve that communication by people being able to go up and see what's happening? I don't have the answer. I just posed the question along with kiosk, along with postcards.
But the last thing I'd like to say is that our group does have a rather unique point of view, and we hope that that point of view will prevail with all of you. Not just because we want it to, but because from our perspective, we have seen how things can go awry and how things can work really well. And we'd like to reinstate that process by which things work really well.
Why do you think your group is unique?
Pardon me?
In what way do you think that
our group is
you're
unique
different?
because there was, I think, and I don't know the exact timing, but there was a period in which all of the 6 areas, or maybe there were 7 at the time, had local citizens advisories committees. And one by one, as I understand it, they fell into disuse and therefore were disbanded. The Southwest Coastal Committee continued for 40 years and was a viable method of communication within the community. When it came to be disbanded, we had a meeting down there, and we filled that little fire hall with local citizens, and we took a vote, and there were 2 that voted to disband, and there were the rest of the people all wanted to continue having the Southwest Coastal Planning Committee.
And did I understand you correctly at the beginning that those of you who are currently on this new CAC are the same ones who were on the CAC previously?
All but one.
Okay, so you come with a long history and a
That's
long
correct.
experience that those of us who are new and haven't done this before, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, consequently, your report is very different than ours.
Yeah. Robert, does that answer your question?
Continuing with an interest in continuing. The phraseology on classic plains was the CAC may continue to function and be an active, integrated segment of classic county's planning process as long as persistent involvement and active participation is demonstrated. And I think it was kind of intriguing language of persistent involvement and active participation.
Yeah, persistent.
Because I think if anything had discredited Southwest, it was persistence.
Yeah, the discrediting was persistent.
Yeah. Has anybody from Southwest run for or pursued planning commission position? Why is there nobody's being prevented from applying and serving on the planning commission from that area?
I can't answer that. That's an individual.
Yeah, Nadia Gardner.
Oh, Nadia's on it. Yes, of course,
Right.
Nadia.
And so I guess
That's a new one.
it almost sounded like there was a geographic exclusion, but so it's actually equal access with somebody from your neighborhood who's on the planet.
I think she's attended 1 meeting so far, 2 maybe. She's just started.
Of your local committee, not of the planning commission, just to be clear.
How long has she been on the planning commission?
About a year.
Oh, yeah, okay. So that, well after all of that.
If I could just interject also, there's no reason members of CACs can't rare for anybody to be at them, and to me, they carry a lot of weight when somebody gets up in the audience. I base a lot of my decision making on what I hear from coming out of the audience to me. Because that is, I believe, the most important goal that we have is the participation of the public in that involvement. And so when people come here, like they have a couple of times on a couple of really hot issues, I made a dig into my movement, and it wasn't that I was bought off by a big crowd there, so they applaud, but they bring solid points. They bring the perspective of the next door neighbor or the person that lives in the town where this is going to have a certain impact. And a lot of times that just gets lost as a real straight on looking at maps and planning documentation and approval.
The place for the comments from the public is right at the top of the agenda after our beloved loyalty oath.
But on issue by issue.
But no, you know, but it's always anytime, you know, we're open as soon as we've made sure we're all loyal. Next thing is business from the public that's not otherwise on the agenda, and no one is ever there.
Mm-hmm.
I looked around the room and I realized I was on the planning commission, I think, when the group was disbanded.
Mm-hmm.
And I that surprises me that I made, I will go ahead and mention the elephant in the room because Todd, you and I may have the most memory of that.
Mm-hmm.
You sort of, from a different perspective, the planning commission wasn't involved, but I attended a couple of meetings down there just to observe.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember, I did, with all of that, you know, the city and the planning, county planning commissions, but it's the quasi-judicial, legislative, whatever kind of thing. And at that point, my understanding is that the county commission felt that the group was overstepping its authority. I mean, I'm not agreeing with that, I'm just saying that I think that was what was under discussion. Some of it was for very good reason. I mean, I don't know about the authority bit, but you're dealing with wetlands issues, there were miniature wetlands issues, boats, probably a better term, but with people, a lot of pressure from outside folks coming in wanting to build on areas that we felt needed to be protected.
There were wetlands.
Yeah, there were wetlands.
Defined wetlands. Yeah.
We're finding out more and more how important those are. But, so there was a time goal between people who would come in with big ideas about this house that we're going to build,
Mm-hmm.
and they were being told you need to, you know, you can't put it over that, you can't cut down this, and so on. And the citizens were rightfully, I think, expressing concern for the very special ecology and environment there.
Mm-hmm.
But the committee became sort of a mini planning commission that felt, you know, that the decision should stop with them. And I think, you know, you can talk to us. There's got to be somebody who's been around longer than me.
We were.
Julie could give you her version, and I would trust her version. But that's the elephant in the room, that all the other groups kind of die out, as they do in planning, because people come when their own issues are threatened or their own interests are involved. They don't, most of us don't keep going to meetings if there isn't something as strong as there. But your group had some very sensitive areas you were trying to protect, and high value areas in, you know, in our, if we're environmentalists, high value areas. And I think that was, you know, that was what the tugging
There were two issues on around wetlands. And in one case, the wetland was filled in because the person bought equivalent somehow preserving.
Mitigation.
Yeah. But I want to just say that we were an advisory committee. That's all we could do was advise the planning commission. And, huh?
You rubbed someone.
Well, what we did, I think we rubbed the staff, and maybe, huh?
Was the county chair of the county commission, but I was, that was.
I'm not talking about the county manager.
I understand, but that meeting, and without, I don't think we should dwell on this the whole meeting here, but.
No, I think it's
But,
better.
that was the first meeting of the planning commission that I sat on, and I had to make a decision on that. And I was the only vote to keep the South County Citizens Advisory Committee because that's a far-flung part of the county, and it was a way, it's a lot of work for them to come to Astoria. I can be here 5 minutes from my house, and it's easy for me to come here and comment. So I felt like that was a good outpost for the county to have, and it gave a lot of valuable information. And I think it's true of the interior of the county too. It would be great if we had something in Jewel, a real active group that the planning commission could then count on, just to hear from. We could make our own decision. And I was taken in and advised by county council to not allow it to continue and to vote them out. But I didn't take her advice because her advice was legal advice. And my position was, as I say, goal one is very important.
And I think I was leaving to go to the city planning commission about that time, but I think it was personalities. I mean, I went to a couple of meetings, and county staff came all down and were very rude to her.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were rude.
Which, to Julia?
No, it was Hanson, Heather Hanson.
Too long ago.
Heather Hanson.
But,
Huh.
there was a lot of friction there. Yes. So talk to Julia, she'll know.
I have heard Julie's stories.
So I want to recognize a couple hands, and you probably ought to be wrapping up this section. Cheryl, if you have something.
That's it. I appreciate addressing the elephant in the room. I think that's always healthy. And I am ready to move on. I really appreciate your energy to try and keep us on task. I always like a meeting that stays on the agenda, and we're well past this one now. To replow something that happened in the past is, I think at this point, we're ready to move on.
Something related though is keep it in the room, no matter what the history of the past in terms of the regional. I think the addition of regional things demands a level of staff time that I think is not always articulated in terms of kind of the requests that are done, and that collective adds up to a person someday. So I just wanted to make that be known, like not necessarily for any region, but for any more. You got my message.
Yeah.
No, that's the point.
I question that there were other citizens advisory committees that gradually petered out. The Southwest kind of stayed in existence because it was the poor sister. Planning in the county was done from the north-south. Lots of money was done on wetlands planning at the north, and they were the ones where we didn't get to it. So they had to be alive. But yes, occasionally there would be, like for regional problem solving, you'd have a group gather up North Classic Plains. But I don't think there were 5 or 6 other groups that historically were kept going.
Cheryl, you did mention earlier, circling back to Kathleen, about publications.
I'll pass
and notice.
since
Okay. I will say,
We're well past.
just to the things that you were talking about, one of the things that's nice about, so each of our meetings should be oriented toward a particular goal in the statewide goals, and each of those has a different topic that if we're topically advertising to those goals, if someone is interested in wetlands or interested in their coastal zone, there will be appropriate meetings for them to come to. So we just need to make sure our messaging is on point for that.
I think also, this is complicated stuff, and to say, these are welcome meetings, you can come and listen, and you can come and learn. If you want to send an email afterwards, that's okay. But we're not expecting you to be an expert when you come. We just want your input.
Thank you. Gail, we've taken over your time, but
I'm happy to yield. It's my presentation is all on the PowerPoint, and all it really is are just facts and figures of things to think about. And very briefly, I'll summarize them. Think about the aging of our population as we go through, think about climate change, think about the impacts that we have from traffic, that we will be facing water shortages and are facing water shortages in the county. I think those are the big ones that I wanted to hit on.
That sounds like a goal two presentation.
Because that's what we're talking about today. Most of what, the important stuff is already discussed by Lisa Phipps, but my handout and the PowerPoint is on the counter, so, or the table. And also, if you haven't signed in, please sign in yet.
If I may say one more thing. I would think that we are being more successful when you, and this is what really is that when conversation among normal people start talking about this. When you go to the grocery store, did you hear that meeting that they talked about? And what did you think about that? We can get everybody talking to each other about it and try to get as much factual information out there. I think that would be helpful. I don't know how you do that, but I mean, people are already talking about some of these issues and say, well, you know what, right now we're looking at that at the county level. This is, you can go online, you can read what they have up there, you can send in the emails in, you know what I'm saying?
I just want a quick statement and say thank you, Kathleen, and also, in this case, for this meeting, to Andrea. That's how I found out about this meeting. I don't know what list you sent it to, but that's how I found out. And then I started typing in and finding out, what is this thing? Oh, yeah, I'm paying you it. So, I'm saying stuff out all the time that I find. Just reminders, this is happening, and this is what it is, not just the title. Because I agree, most of us,
Are kindergartners, do they have any idea of this language? That's, I'm sorry, I know that everyone in my high school class, just a zillion years ago, 60 years ago, understood the concept of social justice. And I just think we need to build from preschool up so that a few years from now, the lexicon will be there.
Do you have money for an application, computer app, some city type thing, like Classic County online app, where you can be first-person shooters on top of it? Or have some kind of interactive simulation, because this is painfully boring for most people. I was thinking we should almost have a designated driver program, oh my God, 10 of us are concerned about this. We have to draw straws and make one person go to the meeting and then come back and report. So ways to make it more engaging. I know, there are SimCity type things. I know that's difficult and expensive, but this is a tough thing to engage in traditional ways. Take the meetings to Safeway is what I was thinking of when you were talking about what we do to people at Safeway. Pull up right in the produce aisle here. Pull up
Or even, Home Depot or City Lumber, or people are talking about changing this or that. There's little kiosks that, I don't know. Those are the folks that are changing their surroundings.
Astoria got a Ford Foundation grant for simulation, and it was significant. It was a multi-year, $50,000 a year, and then they realized, oh, damn, they did the pictures in the paper, but then said, we don't want to empower the unempowered. We didn't read the fine print, and they just tucked tail and ran. But yes, it was simulation of knowing everybody in the city of Astoria downtown, specifically, not as a generality, but trying to solve by knowing. And what I'm saying is, it's plausible that it's one of those entities, the other Ford Foundation, not the one Roseburg, even though Astoria may have gotten a bad name, might be willing to support simulation, but it takes someone who understands how simulation is and sees an application and isn't overwhelmed by, damn, what, we don't want to empower them.
Maybe I'll punt back to my food cart idea, which is like a food cart with the comp plan and like chapter updates and stuff like this, and then you go to the Sunday markets and things like that, more low tech. Anyway. Yes, like a library wagon, yep.
I mean, even just being people that go out in the community and interact socially and bringing it up. I do that so often, and I don't know if my friends think I'm super boring or not, but it's what's up and they're like, what'd you do today? It's like, well, I was reading about this thing, and you know what? And I'll rant about it for a while, and I think they kind of absorb some of it.
Do they tend to drift away?
Maybe like a disco ball in a cart, like at the fair.
Yeah.
You go, you have like chapter 2, you're at the corner of 11th and Marine. Why not? And just like, we got crazy stuff going on in the corner.
Well, I think you line up the streets by goals, so you'd have to be on Second and Marine. Okay, make it really easy.
I wish I had time to have, what I would dream of having, but I just don't have time, is to have, to convene listening sessions. Like, I know, if I'm in my district, and put out the word, let's talk about traffic. Oh boy. I guarantee you that room will be full, because everybody has to wait to get out on the Highway 30, which is a major problem. I don't know if there's any solutions, but we certainly would be hearing ideas from others. If we went up to the senior center and said, what are some of the obstacles you're facing now that you're during this outbreak? I mean, what do you need? I mean, some of these things, we pick the topics and we say, hey, we gotta look at these things. And we just had a series, not the technical meeting that you guys had. Maybe I'm not right to say it's a technical meeting. To put together information open houses.
Town hall.
Or house parties, or.
House that disaster prep thing that was this winter at Fort George, the country park out, that was packed. Beer. People there every. Yeah, I was here, it's true, but people hear about that topic and other things. But coming to me, I guess it's not.
Could we generate some questions that, like, if Patrick has another meeting, say, in my neighborhood, Alderbrook, I have a friend who bought a house down by the river, and she afterwards, after they changed the back, she said, my flood insurance is more expensive than my mortgage. I can't live here. Well, that's a real story about the comprehensive plan. What do we do about ocean rising? What do we do about levees? And everybody that lives in those situations have a comment about that. Maybe some of them have thought about it years long enough to submit a comment that you guys can kind of pull the threads on and figure out how to help. Does that make sense? You know what I'm saying?
And even connect that to, I think what you're proposing having, we can have, there's no reason we can't have a talk on the comp plan as a topic unto itself, or at least just get one of those and have a panel. That'd be kind of interesting. That'd probably be a lot. And even, the conversation with John Orr on Friday mornings, that might be a kind of a perfect.
You could have a trivia pursuit at the bar.
I think it's great.
That would be a really great idea. Land use trivial pursuit.
We can meet at the workers'
All right.
and talk about this.
Absolutely.
Real stories from the front of the comprehensive plan.
Exactly. We need to get stuff spilled on these binders.
So Gail, I do appreciate this discussion. What I would like to do, since we do it, so I think broadly, we're still talking about goal 1 here.
And that's fine. I want you to move at your own pace.
Which is totally fine. We do have some time here on our agenda anyway for goal 2 discussion. just getting the pulse of the group. If people and folks from the public want to talk about goal 2 a bit, I mean, in some sense, I think it's a little bit more of a dry topic than goal 1 is.
not. It's low
We
status. It
we
was
can
always
have different opinions on that, the dryness of this.
I was on the Classification Development Council Ag Committee.
Now that's
And
dry.
there was nothing with lower status in the county forever than ag.
Tell me these.
Weeds.
So what I would like to do for this section is, I know that you're saying you just have some numbers and graphs to go over, but I think it would be important for the public and for members of the group to just get on the same page. What does goal 2 discuss? You know, let's lay some foundation for what we're even talking about in this section. Could you do that for us?
So briefly, goal 2 is the foundation of all the land use regulations that come forward. It lays out the framework of how we do planning, where we are directing growth, where we are trying to keep growth from. It spells out areas where perhaps in Napa and Swenson, Westport, Miles Crossing, Jeffers Gardens, we've done goal exceptions, which basically is a way of telling the state that we are not going to take these lands as resource farm forest lands because they're already developed, or this is they're irrevocably committed, or there's some particular reason that we have to take these lands out of the permanent forest. And the important thing, and I'm summarizing a lot and kind of simplifying it, but the main thing is when Senate Bill 100 was adopted in 1973, the state really took a stand about protecting the farm and the forest land. And it's very important to the state and at the state level, and a lot of the language that is in our code comes out of state statute. And so to be able, in a rural area, to be able to have different types of development that are not farm and forest related, we have to make these goal exceptions. And so if you look at goal 2, it's very frightening because it is literally a real paper.
I just want to be clear, whose goal is it?
There are 2 goal 2s. So there's the statewide plan goal 2, which lays out the things that we need to include in our goal 2. And then there is the goal 2 that Clatsop County itself has actually adopted. So the statewide goal is probably about 6 or 7 pages that lays out, here's 10 different things that you need to include in your goal. And then our goal includes not only those things, but mounds of research and all the exception areas and a list of every single tax lot that was included in that tax area. That's probably half the goal right there. But it really just spells out the framework of, okay, this is the basis of where we are with land use planning in the county. These are the areas that we develop, these are the areas to be protected, and then everything else kind of goes on top of that. So when I put together my presentation, and please pick up a copy, there's plenty, it talked about future demographics. The unincorporated areas of the county are actually expected to decrease in population over the next 40 years. So part of that is just the fact that our population is getting older, and so you're going to see more attrition through people passing away. Part of it is going to be because the cities are growing, and so those urban growth boundaries are going to move. They're going to get annexed into urban areas, and that's going to take population out of unincorporated county and move it to an urban area. And when you plan, you're supposed to plan for a 20-year period. If you want to have a buildable land inventory that will sustain your community for the next 20 years.
Maximum?
See, I thought they were very high.
Like, and the growth rate stops next year, and we go into a negative growth rate, and we add 4,000 people between now and 2067, is that what it says in that graph?
But
4,000 people?
they're changing boundaries, so you're not talking about a constant, you're not talking about the same area.
Right. Because that land
Does it make-
will get annexed into cities over the course of 20 years. And so that's part of the reason our population declines. But there's also just the natural evolution of things.
It talks about in-migration and natural birth and death. I just think that in-migration is super low. I think it would be prudent to expect more of a buffer of incoming Okay.
Before she does that, can I ask a question on this? I can see the source, the census on some things. Some of this is very similar to the housing study.
I pulled stuff
And
right
I'm
out of
looking
the
up some
housing
of that
study.
came from there.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so, and I apologize for not getting the credit on there.
Well, it just helps for me to know where we're sourcing information.
Yeah. So I'm trying to use things that we've already paid for.
Yeah,
That
makes sense.
But that may not be the most, we love the source of information, but there's things that we pay for, so we.
So go to, that's the definition of land use planning, that is goal two.
That's not the official title. The official title is land use planning, but really what we're doing is predicting the future of the next 20 years. So we can pull all this data and we can look at, what comes out of the population research center, and we can say the numbers are high, the numbers are low, but we're predicting. We're all looking into a crystal ball and saying this is what we think is going to happen. I don't know what happened today, but yesterday when I went to lunch, the stock market was crashing. So the stock market is crashing, go back to the recession. This is going to change everything. So what we're looking at today will be completely different tomorrow. This is our best guess as what we think is going to happen in 20 years. Yes.
So Pat was giving the interesting point that between, say, or I'm reading it as between 2010, Glasgow County as a whole, and 2067, you're only going to have 5,500 people, which seems like a little less.
Can we go to figure 15?
I didn't put all the figures in here. This is the age of population. So the full report is actually in your goals packet. If you go online, there's a full goals packet with the full 67-page population predictions that we're drawing these numbers from. That's all online. So.
And I will concede that in the 80s, the whole Washington Power Plant Whoops thing was based on weird population growth estimates in the 80s that happened. So you're right, as far as recessions and things. It just struck me that between now and 2067, there would only be 4,500 more people in the entire county bound to understand.
So,
And if I can say something to kind of support what he's saying, as I'm going out into the county, unincorporated, and doing census work, what I'm seeing is more and more people who have homes or work in Hillsborough, etc., are having homes in our county, as primary homes, maybe as secondary homes, but as it's getting more and more expensive to live in the Portland area, people are willing to commute from Jewel, from Fishhawk Lake, etc., to Hillsborough and Beaverton.
And if you're from California, you're used to an hour to 2 hours.
Yes.
That's normal.
You push back. You're away from that.
I have a question. When I'm up there dealing with stuff, they always talk about, that's unincorporated, we deal only with unincorporated areas. Does this comprehensive plan deal with everything, including the cities, or do the cities have their own?
yeah, they have their own, but our plan has to be consistent with each of the 5 cities.
And if they annex, as the cities grow, and they gather more,
If we want to expand our UGB, we have to ask Clacson County for
but does
permission.
Clacson County lose tax money when the cities gain it?
There's a shift because now they will be paying more, they'll be paying taxes, they still pay an unincorporated tax. And I don't know how that balances out in the end, but probably, yeah, you do.
I mean, do they expect, I remember when I lived in Minnesota, they were talking about St. Paul and St. Cloud and whatnot, and they said in 30 years, this is all going to be one metro area. Do they have a thought about that for Clacson County?
The state, there's too much farmland or forest land for that to happen, it's too well protected at the state level.
And you have to think of the balance of when Seaside needs to expand its UGB in order to meet its 20-year goals. The county can't very well say no, because then they're preventing us from And so there is always that look at the shift.
I used to supervise the population statistics section for our planning agency, and we did the count because we had the staff to do it, expertise. And I would, I know the numbers seem very low, but to me, they're, having watched this over 25 years, the place has grown very slowly. And I came from an area where the city was growing by 18,000 people per year. So that was quite a shock to me. But given the age of the population here, given the number of second homes, so on, I can understand that. What I'm wondering is, and it's our crystal ball, is climate change going to drive more population here because we are cooler, because we are green, because
Wet.
our air, we're wet, yes, but our air is cleaner than most. Not to say it's clean, but it's cleaner than most. And that's going to be, I don't know how we come about that, but if you look at the age of the population here, granted, I'm seeing more people like you in the area and seeing them taking over positions of responsibility in the community. It's wonderful.
So those numbers didn't start.
But they didn't start with me, but because we have a very slow growth curve here. And some places like Astoria simply don't have a lot of area where they can grow.
It's very close to the same population as they
And the mayor of Morrison is now talking about maybe they need to rethink what they're doing and, not cover so many wetlands and that kind of thing. So he said, well, it's a complicated thing, but they didn't strike me, given the age profile, as strange.
Living in Gerhart, I'm looking at the seaside to the south, Warrington to the north, and they could each expand and maybe keep up with the numbers that were generated here. With the squeeze play coming from Gerhart, that's the largest city in the state of Oregon, still on a septic system. And there are not many more buildable lots. We used to have them 50 by 100. They're now 100 by 100. There's plenty of houses still for sale. There are other pieces, but that is the main problem, is going to be, what are you going to do with the waste? How are you going to expand when you've got the squeeze play? Where are you going to go?
You would have to have services.
Well, even if you did, there still isn't, looking at, we're talking 300 more people, we've got 720 houses roughly now.
And the water table's so high. All sorts of
There's a lot of problems, and we haven't even talked about FEMA that I'm sitting in the community for. And so I'm thinking, if it's realistic, number-wise, it makes some sense. When your boots are on the ground, it isn't going to work. So.
And the other side of the climate change coin is climate change, maybe more people moving here, but at the other side, are the oceans going to rise? Is the river going to rise? Is that going to take away some of the land?
There is another table that is important to look at related to the approximately, close to 6,000 people that are expected in the next 50 years. The buildable land supply. And for all the cities, there's a huge amount of buildable land. And sure, it probably includes stuff that when you get right down on the ground and walk out there, you find out there's somebody who's can't build. But look at the number of lots that are vacant or partially vacant there in Warrington and in Astoria.
However, when they were questioned, they came to Seaside twice, and we questioned them specifically about did they remove wetlands?
I know,
And
but
they
add
did not.
these numbers up there, but for countywide, there's over 13,000 buildable sites here. And you're talking about 5,000 people, maybe 2 to 3 people per site. You've got, you only need 1 out of 10 of those lots to be really truly buildable, to provide building sites for the population that's due to come. It's just right there. I mean, it's 10 to 1 at least.
You have to believe their statistics.
Well, I don't think they're off by 10. I just don't believe they're off by factor of 10.
Well, also, there's more talk about high-density housing, and moving higher-density housing to rural areas. And even if you have a lot, you have like a 25 density lot. But the septic system, that's a huge, that's a huge thing.
So, I look at this, those lots of value. I'm just like, I have a potential buildable lot, and I track on stable buildable lots in Astoria. And I personally think they're very few. And the central school spot up by Irving and Knight, nobody's moving on it. I mean, it's not, it's a lot of it's stable. I mean, the interest, they all say infrastructure development is so much, it would never be low-income housing. And that's one of the huge problems, is that we don't need more second homes. Because to me, your part in Cannon Beach almost feels like a ghost town sometimes in certain areas because of the second home thing. And some of this stuff in population, that's not houses, but that's people that are living here right now. There's a lot of empty homes in this county. Has there been a study of empty homes that are second homes, and most of the time they're not?
I think there is some data in the housing study that I didn't pull up.
That would be curious to see. And Jewel, I totally agree with you. It's not second homes. They're just going out to Jewel from, somebody from Miami because of the sea level rise. And
Jewel.
yes. And California tends to go to Portland, and Portland comes here. I have a lot of neighbors up on Lexington where I have a house that's Portland people. So it would be really interesting to see the population movement. I think climate change is just really hitting. I mean, the Midwest this year has just been horrible. I can't imagine anybody wanting to stay in the Midwest. All the winter floods that froze and had ice dam breaks and going through fields and the tornado and then on and on and on, and the river floodings of all the river systems of the Midwest. But in Miami, my mother's in Miami, and it's going to go on. And then on to this morning show on Norfolk is boating around Norfolk, Virginia. And the only reason we don't have such an impact is the subduction zone is making us go up. But sea level rise is going on faster than we're going up. And then, of course, within 30 years, the Gordon Lake is going to be outside of the lease zone period. And when the Gordon Lake releases, one of three things will happen, and we'll find out which of those three happens. Two of them means earthquakes. And so, because it can also zone, even if just Gordon Lake goes, we can have zonal releases with like 7-point earthquakes instead of 9-point earthquakes up and down like Chile did the last time. So, it's a naughty question. The only last thing too about Seaside and Tsunami, they need to move their urban growth boundary into the hills, which are they planning that?
Yeah, we have some of that on the books.
Yeah, into the Fukuoka project.
Yeah, that's
the forest land.
Like that great big number in Warrenton, the buildable lots that are actually connected but on a wetland with no access or road to them, or are those buildable lots with infrastructure?
I don't think they necessarily have infrastructure. I did not go into the Morrison's numbers too closely. I was more concerned about unincorporated. But again, this is all in the housing study. The housing study is on the county website and probably the city's website as well.
I think for what it's worth, the overlays that include the growth boundaries, of course, have all of that, and if they're just using the overlay, they're not So to redirect the conversation a little bit toward goal 2. So we did get this coordinated population forecast, which was in our packet, which includes much of the data that we've seen on the screen, though not necessarily all of it, I think.
Right.
Anything that we as a group draw out of either the data we've seen here or from population forecast that we need to keep in consideration as we move forward? So we've got a big theoretical landscape, right, in some parts of the county. What does that say to us as a group about what we should do with planning? We're moving forward with these goal sets and trying to take something away from these projections. What do we take away from this? How does this affect our plans?
Whether in a city or county, I think we need to have a good sense of, from soil maps, which of this land is tide flat.
Okay. So can we ask staff? So there's a variety of considerations that might exclude a bunch of this land supply. Can we ask staff to give us some feedback about what is valid, what is developable right now without environmental
And you can probably see it on the county website because there is soil map overlays. And I'm talking about simply alluvial silt covering a lot of area where it was declared new housing sites on the little log farm out on Gun Bay.
This one's Astorian, front page, had a nice story with a lot of meat in it by the mayor of Warrenton. And he started out by saying, we've had a lot of things, an awful lot of growth, we've really supported things. He says, we don't need to go there, but we have made some mistakes. We've built city or parts of places where we've got new housing and no streetlights. And he goes on to talk about, if we're going to expand, we're going to look at the citizens of Warrenton being Warrenton. Use that as a quote. And that's actually readdressing, not the big box stores, because that's got them a lot of things, kind of like Hillsborough in certain ways, but to go back and really bond with Hammond, be able to be a unified entity going forward, and the expansion they're going to do is going to be paid for by the developers that work with the infrastructure to get things up to make it livable and not come down as a consequence the extra taxes on those homeowners that don't have the lights, the night lights, the extra facilities and that are paid by the developers in the future, not higher taxes from those residents.
And that has been so contrary to the history that long ago, real calculations were that it was about $60,000 per dwelling for system development costs. And there was such power of saying this will make everything unaffordable. So what we'll do is we'll spread the cost to every resident. And for damn sure aren't going to have real system development costs passed along because it'll make us unaffordable.
And at the very first housing meeting that was held at Classic Community College about 2 years ago, or maybe 3, there were builders there, and one of the things they said was they don't build in Seaside because Seaside has the highest system development charges. They build in Warrenton because Warrenton has the lowest. I also attended the Citizens Police Academy, and when we went and visited Warrenton, and their police department, which is squeezed into a small building, it is so inadequate. Facilities are so bad, and what we were told was they don't have the money to do it because when LNG was coming to town, they were promised millions of dollars, so they never raised SECs, they never raised property tax, they never raised anything because they hung their hat on this money. And the money, of course, did not materialize. So they are now reaping, unfortunately, the lack of money that they didn't plan for.
Gil Gramson, I recall, I wish I could tell you exactly what day, when. I remember him articulating, growth is what keeps our taxes low. And so it totally flew in the face of reality. But that was, I don't doubt that he truly believes that.
Either you charge developers to pay the incremental cost, or your people who live there right now pay for it.
And if they're unwilling
If I'm sold, or if I'm sold development fees, that cover lights and new schools and parks and fire and everything, because otherwise, your existing homeowners are paying for the new development.
Sure.
I'd like to question about what out of all this information do we need to keep in mind, as we're moving forward? And I appreciate all of those studies that Gail pulled together, because I read them and there were some surprises in there and there were some not surprises in there. But first of all, in this, I was very, very impressed at how hard Oregon has worked to protect their farm and their forest land. To just read that, the history of how we got to where we are, I was very impressed. And those of us who've lived in other states, they have trashed their farmland. And just the whole history of it, I was impressed at how hard our state has worked. And we are Clatsop County, so the land use planning in Clatsop County is to protect farm and forest land. We didn't say much about the aging, and you have put together nice facts about the aging in there. We always hear that Clatsop County is aging, and so I was surprised to read that Clatsop County is aging, but slower than the rest of the state. And what I scribbled down here was that in 2000, the average age was 40. In 2010, it was 43. And in 2015, 43.9. So we're not aging as rapidly as I have heard or as I believe. And so as we're thinking about services for a growing community in the future, to keep in mind that aging, that we are aging, but I was very surprised, but slower than the rest of the state.
And yet, by 2035, 1/3 of our population will be over 65.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it is those statistics, because I understand that a lot of people are we don't have the facilities to house people that are far into their age, they have to go someplace else. So does that change our statistics?
We may not have those facilities now, but smart companies may find that this is the place for them to build. Also, there's all the advances that are being made for people to age in place.
Also, again, I appreciate the information and the discussion that you gave us on the housing. And again, there's so much discussion in Clatsop County about how to get low-income and affordable housing. So I was surprised to read that the housing stock or the housing supply is stable. That was very interesting to me. So again, we as planners for the future are not necessarily going to increase the housing. But I think somebody already mentioned it today. What we need to be focusing on is low-income and affordable housing, not lack of housing in general. We don't necessarily need to be building more houses. And then
Cheryl, can I interject just on that point? I thought one of the few margin notes I made in that packet that we had was about we had 4% population growth between 2010 or 2000 and 2010, and we had 9% housing stock growth. So our housing stock was growing quicker than our population was. But you wouldn't know it from housing prices or anything. Of course, that was pre-recession. It'll be interesting once we get the new census and we've got a new housing study to compare those numbers again. But at least in the data covered here, our housing stock does not seem to be a pressing problem. But of course, the use of that housing in some of the sub-communities like Gearhart and Seaside, where the rate of occupancy is not super high, is problematic. You had one more point though, before we get other things. I want to let you.
Yeah, and the last sort of surprise, interesting thing that I wrote out is in Clatsop County, 90% of the land is forest land. And I should not have been surprised. My back property line is state forestry, but 90% of Clatsop County is forest land. That one was just a Oh, my goodness. So we're actually talking about 10% of the land in Clatsop County.
We have the largest, one of the largest state forest lands holdings in Clatsop County, and then I think the next one is Greenwood Resources.
And one of our goals is forest, so I don't want to segue us into forest. We will do a whole thing on that, but just in the big picture, that one was a.
I just mean that in other counties, they have federal land or they have this land, we don't in this county.
And it's some of the most highly productive forest land in the world.
So you all have copies of the big map that should be in your folders. They're folded up in the front pocket. But this is basically the county's land use map. And everything that's the light green, the dark green, the medium green, those are your resource lands. So there's very little. Most of it is in the incorporated areas and along the coast and then along the river headed.
And resource lands,
Farm, forest, or ag forest lands. So your F80, the AF.
I would say that's right.
Well, it may look great, that's the,
No, but most of that,
it looks great, but it's really green.
oh, gotcha. So the yellow
The yellow
is
is
incorporated, is the
residential land.
Yeah.
The yellow. But anyway, just to give you an idea, if you see the big map, it looks very green-gray.
On the housing thing, the thing that dismayed me on this was to learn that 58% of the new home starts since 2010 are not primary homes, they're short-term rentals. 58%. And that is something that that's not something I think the county so much can do something about. It's the cities. The cities have to do something about it. Seaside is. We're working on it. But 58, so we could have enough houses, but it's the use of those houses.
There's a couple of factors that are ancillary to this, but fit in. I'm lucky enough to serve on the advisory council for Cedar in Clatsop Economic Development. We spend a day, in fact, you've had the chance to come and be in on those tours for fisheries, and another one for forestry every year. Here, we've got Bornstein, for instance, Pacific Fresh Seafood. They've got 4 big months and upwards of 350 employees in one of those one of those places. They now bus people in from Chehalis, Centralia to work on this. Yes, they're currently looking at expanding apartments and whatever. They're working at also, some of the things can be flash frozen and packaged throughout the year, and that's one thing they're going towards, especially Bornstein is. When you look at Pacific Fresh, and spend a bit of time there, they needed 300 workers. They're down to 150. They just can't find enough people to come in. And of course, this is a short period of time when you do that, so you need the housing for a short period, but not for the long period. So that kind of is in contrast to most other areas because we're literally a tourist economic growth. The second point, totally different on the forests. And we are, of the 36 counties in Oregon, one of the largest with the timber. There are entities, and I can't give you all the specifics of how that is, but all of the money that goes towards some of the other counties is coming out of the timber tax that we pay here. In Tillamook, for instance, they have a wonderful new forestry education center. That's paid for timber that's harvested right here in Clatsop County. That's their chunk of what they're getting from what we have as a resource. So it's statewide, and there may be rules that you people know more about than I. And it allows for the rest of the counties to share in the piece of the pie that we live on.
Gail, can I ask a question? Thank you, Harold. Can I ask a question about, so all of our planning documents need to agree between the urban growth areas and the county, correct? Right. Is that a negotiated agreement? Is that does one or other of the entities have power that must be followed by the other entity?
No, well, we all report to the state. What we do, and my understanding is that Seaside cannot necessarily come into our comp plan. We've been working, well, we send notices out to Kevin Couple, and the planning directors of Gerhardt and Warrenton and Cannon Beach and Seaside and Astoria, whoever that may be today. But we do try to coordinate and keep them in the loop so that if we get to a point where we're raising something that could be inconsistent, and honestly, I've not read Seaside horror stories. But that's the way that we've been working at it, more at a staff level.
So that sounds like sort of a good neighbor policy that we're just trying to come to an agreement. What happens if, I don't know, so what if we as a county group, I don't think we're gonna do this, but say we are not going to allow any more short-term rental starts. And Seaside's not going, or any of the urban growth areas, is not gonna go for that, right? So what would happen in that instance if there was broad disagreement on a point between our two documents?
Well, that I think would be fine because there is no statewide requirement that says you have to have a short-term rental or you don't have to have it. It's a regulation that wouldn't necessarily be in a comprehensive plan. You could make a general statement about, we want to support permanent resident housing as opposed to the addition of more second homes, and so you would write a policy that says something along the lines of, prepare ordinances that would limit the availability of new short-term rentals in the future, or something like that. And that's something that we make, and as each jurisdiction. So, Gerhardt has their lottery policy where we adopted. The county allows them in any single-family home. I'm not sure what Seaside's regulations are. Astoria just adopted some.
So are there any areas of substantial overlap where the county and the urban growth areas need to come to agreement?
Oh God, that's a question.
But like affordable housing, one city
Yeah,
can
affordable
say we
housing.
don't want affordable housing, but the county would say yes, you have to, because it's in the comp plan and it's identified.
Affordable housing might be an issue where you definitely want to make sure you're coordinated. I think more in terms of, so suppose the county says we need more industrial land over the next 20 years. And we decide that the best place to put that is right next to the edge of the urban growth boundary in Seaside where it's residential. And their plan says we want to use that area over the next 20 years to expand our housing stock because we have a housing shortage. Or we say that land all needs to be put into a conservation zone and should never be touched because it's one of those. So that could create a conflict. Things like that. It's the policies and the long-term use of the land as opposed to the specific zoning regulations that come in. Does that kind of make sense in answering the
Thankfully,
question?
geography has helped us along for a long time. No one, really wants to put industrial activity off in the northwest corner of Oregon. It just so it's been it has been a myth.
Well, we do have local industry though, and we do have local industrial uses. So yeah, is it going to be a Saturn plant coming in here? No. But is it going to be an expansion of something that's in Miles Crossing?
It's not going to be an Alumax plant there where Walmart is.
Well, I don't think anybody wants that, but but we have locally grown businesses that will need to expand in the future if we nurture them.
So one topic that I would like to bring up just a little bit, and this is talking about this population forecast, is figure 11, which is on page 14, if you have that packet in front of you, is the age-specific migration rates in the county. I think this brings up a variety of issues, some related to folks who are broadly in middle age moving to the county, and also people that are broadly in their 20s departing the county at fairly high rates.
Tell us again where you are, please.
Sure, it's part of this coordinated population forecast.
Thank you.
It's on page 14. And I apologize that we don't have a slide for this. If I could briefly describe it, it's showing the migration rate in or out of the county of population. And in broad terms, when you look at it, the migration rate is positive until you get to about age 20, and then it drops off a cliff. It doesn't come back again until you're about 30, 35 years old. And the biggest rate of inflow is folks that are 60 to 70-ish. So, you know, I'm bringing this up in case we want to try to address this within this body in any meaningful fashion. You know, I think there could be various causes for this: affordable housing, job availability, need for education, and are any of those things or other topics things that we want to talk about in this group and try to address?
I have a question. So do they go off and they babies elsewhere and bring the babies home to you?
They go off to school
Yeah.
first,
Yeah.
which is one of the challenges that Classic Community College is trying to overcome. And that is, how do we keep them here going to school? How do we provide them with family wage jobs to keep them here between 18 and 20? On the other hand, there is this big source of pride that I've always seen is people leave, but they tend to come back.
And that's the thing, maybe your community place that your kids want to come back to. If you want to chain them to the kitchen table, you can do that. But I mean, make it a place that they want to come back to.
Exactly.
Yeah, someone that grew up here, I just have to say, I think anyone that grows up here should leave for a while before they come back. I mean, you have to get perspective. You can't just stay here your whole life. I mean, you can't. But I think
And a
that
strategy
it's
that
great.
targets that is a thing, I think
Yeah.
we have to challenge
Go
that.
and explore the world, and then you will really appreciate how amazing it is here, and you'll be excited to come back.
And that's not unusual for small towns.
Yeah.
For rural areas, you know, I've got to get out of here.
Right.
That's not unusual.
But I'm still wondering, if they're coming back 30+ years old, they're coming back.
Maybe not the same one.
Are they coming back with children?
I mean, I didn't.
Not necessarily.
Right, moving back in with their parents.
I know you're a data analyst, but I have a question about the interpretation of this. Is it not the fact that the greatest increase of people moving to Astoria are the 30 to 40-year-olds? Is not this the largest growing segment?
So I'm seeing I was calling out the peak at the 65 to
Right.
69.
But the greatest rate of growth is between 30 and 40. So is that not the people that are migrating in that, and so might that demographic be a juicy demographic for planning for the next 20 years?
You know, when I see people moving here,
And that math, I think I'm reading the data points differently. I think this is a smooth graph of individual brackets that should really be straight lines in between. I don't think this is a indicative of a rate.
I see, okay.
I think it's just that this is a negative 0.25 and this is a.
Yeah, it should have been shown as a histogram, in other words.
I see. So the big takeaway though is the largest number of people coming in are those between 60 and 70 because your initial plan.
Or at least that's the largest growing
Right there, yeah.
segment. You know, this doesn't inform us about, you know, we've got the other data points that inform us about how big each segment is. You know, like how like this, the 65 to 69 seems to have the highest growth rate, but if there were only 10 of them, then it didn't matter.
It ties in, I'll keep it brief. At the college, they're finding that people don't have the money to do what we used to consider a full-time schedule. You know, so 4 classes is a hell of a load, 3 is a hell of a load. If you have literally 2 and 3 service industry jobs to keep that going, and you know, this is not a figment of the imagination. If you do your hours in Astoria, you do your hours on Broadway and Seaside, and how the hell do you squeeze energy to go take 2-3 classes? Yeah, it's just that is a demographic that the college deals with.
And of course, when you see all the students, the graduates, who are getting scholarships, they're not using those scholarships here.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to speak to your question of are the people moving back in that age range with kids? I mean, I feel like there's generally people are noticing my generation having less kids, I think, in general. But I do feel like there are a lot of people, I mean, I work in real estate too, and a lot of people that I sell houses to that are moving here from outside of the area are young couples with like one baby, maybe, or, you know, usually one. But so there are people, young families moving here, whether they're moving back because they grew up here, went out, found a partner, found a life, got a career, came back, or, but yeah, that's not, I don't know if that's people that grew up in a different place or grew up here. But then what I wanted to say about the college housing too, I was on the college board for a couple of years, and that's a conversation that they're having too, is trying to figure out if there's a way to have student housing or build student housing, where that could go, how they could fund that. It's not off their radar, but it's definitely not at the top of the list.
Yeah, and they've run away from it in the past.
And there used to be lots of used to be student housing.
Yeah, it would be great.
That's filled up.
But privatization became more popular.
Second home.
Well, no, I mean, just get out of that business because it's damn hard to provide affordable housing.
Sure.
On this page 14 that you referred to, real briefly, it says, from 2000 to 2010, younger individuals moved out of Clatsop County in search of employment and, as Tina pointed out, educational opportunities. This outmigration of young adults is a trend typical in most Oregon counties. I think it should say most Oregon rural counties. And, you know, and I agree with what Andrea said, that anybody who grows up in a small town needs to leave and understand what they had, and then choose or not choose to come back. So not just Clatsop County, but all small towns. At the same time, however, the county attracted a modest number of adults and retirees. Many in-migrants were accompanied by their children, as shown by the in-migration of persons under the age of 14. And again, as I mentioned at the beginning, 3 of the 5 people on the Northeast CAC are young people with families, very young people. One of whom, as I mentioned, is doing organic gardening, so started a business here. And all 3 of those families moved here, so they are in migration, and they all have children.
Well, the chart up there, those younger brackets up there, they didn't come here on a bus. They came from their parents. Those are the children of those people that came back.
In the studies, do you have the school population enrollment of Crawford County?
Yes, that's in this study too, and we haven't talked about that, but there are nice pages with the school information population.
Kathleen, go ahead.
Two things that I think about those 2 populations. I don't know what to do with this, but one is the quality of schools. People bring their children here, they want a certain quality of school. How can we help schools? And the other one, speaking for myself, who's losing my lifetime vision, we've got an older population. How can we help with mass transportation so that there's mobility for people who still want to get around?
Go to bed earlier.
So, being mindful of time, I want to try and wrap up the goal 2 discussion for today, though there's no reason why we can't come back to this if new things come up. Does anyone have any points they want to touch on in today's discussion before we share?
Whenever it's appropriate, I have 2 questions from my reading, and they both have to do with, is exemptions the right word?
Exceptions.
Exceptions. They're directly related to exceptions, and so if that's appropriate for today, I would ask today, and if that's a topic for another day, I would do it on another day.
Goal 2.
So,
Let's go for it right now, unless anyone
do you want to sort of wrap this up first, because that would take us in a different direction. Exceptions.
I think exceptions are part of the goal too, so
Yes.
I think it's appropriate for us to discuss that now.
Okay.
We can knock that off.
Let me take out.
Gail, your answer has to be yes or no, though.
42.
Let me go to my blue marker. Gail, it says, add to goal 2, land use planning, the following language and map. Number 1, a need for mid-water transfer bulk of commodities facilities within the Columbia River near Lois and Mott Islands has been proposed. Number 2, interest has been expressed to locate a 400 to 600 acre designation resort in the area north of Earhart. What are the status of those? Are those things that are still under consideration? Is this history and it's gone?
That's history.
Okay. Okay, so these are nowhere. These are DOA. Right. Okay. Thank you. And Goal 2, Part 2, other exceptions. Goal 16 and 17, Columbia River Estuary tide gates, Columbia River Estuary dike maintenance, Columbia River Estuary floating residence, aquatic development at Bradwood, Ecola Creek Estuary. I'm thinking that those are things that were already accepted. I'm reading on the bottom from where.
So where are you again?
Okay.
Unfortunately, Goal 2 is very bad at page numbering.
Well, and there's different sections, and each section is numbered within itself, and there aren't numbers that flow through for it. So, Goal 2, land use planning designation of rural land. I was hoping that tide gate maintenance and dike maintenance would okay, for instance, okay, and at the bottom of those, it says approved 1290. Okay, so my question is, what are the status of those exemptions? And am I reading this correctly that
I
they
would
not
have to see
approved?
specifically what you're looking at, because off the top of my head, I can't answer your question.
Okay.
Cheryl, do you mind going over that with Gail, external to this meeting?
Yeah, not at all, and I don't mean to be down in the weeds, it's just that the exceptions are a big chunk in here. So I went through and pulled out and read all of the ones that were pertinent to the northeast, to my section. So my general question to you is, are those things that have already been passed and they're done? Are they things that are in progress? Or, like those other two, are they things that were suggested in our DOA?
Okay.
That
That I would
that's
have to
my
get back to you on.
big picture question.
I don't know the answer off the top of my head.
Okay.
But generally, if they were dated 1990,
It says
yeah,
approved 1290.
Well, once an exception is taken, it's taken, and it remains in effect. Now, the specific projects that you're talking about in terms of tide gates and maintenance and whatever was going on at Bradwood, that one's done, but I'd have to look at the others.
There was an example of exceptions in the write-up that you did that included a Miles Crossing Jeffers Gardens overhead photo. Could I ask, what was the exception that to goal 14? What was that showing me? I mean, like this picture right here?
Yeah, where the scrapyard is.
Oh, because goal 14 is urbanization, and so the reason I put that picture there, and I have to think where I pulled it from. Of course, I have to find it.
we're going to have people.
Yeah, but isn't that, I believe that's Miles Crossing,
Yeah.
Jeffers Gardens. It was just a random photo I threw in to kind of give you an idea of where we had taken an exception and give it a.
But what was the exception in that picture? What shouldn't be there?
Urbanized.
An exception isn't something that shouldn't be there. An exception means that everything else around it was basically resource land, but we took an exception to the resource land goals because that area was already developed and committed. So it's basically to show that that's an area where we said, hey, state, we're taking an exception to this, exempt us out, basically.
And it's not grandfathered with lawful change in property owner or anything like that?
No.
That use is perpetuity?
Now, he may have a particular use on that particular piece. I pulled a random aerial photo.
Okay, so
I
she
did
too
not.
much into it.
Yeah, don't read too much into
Don't
that.
need any
And I'm
story.
trying not to pick very clear pictures of very specific businesses because I don't want people to feel I'm
All right,
picking
I'll
on them.
squint,
because
I'll
I'm
squint a
not.
little bit.
Just put captions underneath.
Well, I did, but apparently my.
You.
This is off the wall, that I won't be here for the forest and connect. I think in terms of to me, the overwhelming need throughout the county is for workers' housing. That's the thing that we've got to approach every place. And we obviously, there's some places that are tsunami zones and so we're not going to build housing there, but that's but, you know, I think that's something we've just got to take on. And the other two little comments, because I won't be here, I will review all my materials, I'm sure I'll have thoughts later. But in terms of climate change, I was talking to a guy who used to be a carpenter who now grows organic vegetables, which he brings into Lou's orchard and so on. He said we used to grow potatoes. That's a plant. I think we need to look at small farming operations that would help sustain. Because one of these days, we need to have a good supply here. And so if we can look toward what we can do to help small farmers, you know, we've got some marvelous small farmers who are providing us CSAs and so on, and bringing good vegetables into the markets and so on. But we need to encourage those. When we get to forestry issues, what is that big, nasty one? I would like us to hear not only from the forestry tour kind of people, but from the people that are talking about watersheds, toxic spraying, and those kinds of things, and what's happening, she knows, to our forestry issues in the county, where we stand compared to other counties, and how much of the monies that the state gets from forestry goes back to support the Department of Forestry, and with pretty ads on the television telling us about the birds and flowers and deer and trees, and how at the state level we need to start lobbying for some change that recognizes the need for our small communities to have clean water. We're lucky here in Astoria owns their entire watershed, but that's something that doesn't want to be. I was down in the other night listening to a presentation. Yes.
I just want to put a small commercial in for the forest management plan. The state is looking at changing the forest management plan statewide, and they are doing a series of informational meetings. FDIC, the information they present to the Forest Land Advisory Committee, they also repeat again to the public. And I encourage, if you have extra time, to take a look at that.
The new members on the commission now, the new members on the commission, right?
We have 3 new board members of the Board of Forestry, yes. And I don't know how you get onto we get email notifications, but you can go on the Board of Forestry, the Oregon Board of Forestry. Because I get the emails all the time, but I don't know the rest of those meetings.
Can management practices be influenced by the comprehensive plan language in that goal?
Well, that's interesting. I don't know that.
It's really the other way around.
But
Our goal will be influenced by forest practices.
But, you know, how do you make a change?
Why indeed? And how do
What's the language that is used for affordable housing, workforce housing? It morphs.
They say workforce because they don't, affordable is falling out of favor.
Well, of course it has, and so has slave cribs. You know, but it's still,
Still the barista that you see.
you're still talking about the same thing. When you're talking about hauling people in, packing them away sight unseen, putting them under the power lines, segregating them in Warrenton over by Doggy Dock Out. It's always but it's, how's it phrased? Because it's certainly not integrating society.
Yes. I so agree with that, and I feel like when people talk about tiny homes or small houses or tiny, studio apartments as a solution for workforce housing, these people have families, they have a quality of life, maybe they have a pet, they want a yard. You work full-time, 2 or 3 jobs, and in respectable careers, you should be able to afford to have that. And I know that that's taking on something that's beyond our control.
Not really.
But I don't know. It feels beyond our control, but it feels so important. Look at the quality of life that we're offering our workforce, because they're not slaves, they're humans that have a lot of needs besides just a bed.
It affects other services that have to be called upon when people aren't in good health and they're mentally not feeling well because of the conditions that they have to put up with just to survive.
And
So
they can't.
a lot of our problems, and a lot of money goes into our mental health and policing and dealing with kids that are having problems, and it's because we have a lousy economic system in this county. There aren't good jobs in this county. There aren't high enough paying wages in this county. So things that you can do to get land use flexible enough to bring in other kinds of opportunities and, don't aerial spray into schools and things like that is probably.
The other side of the affordable housing coin is affordable in-house. And so I realize the pulse nature, fishing industry and stuff like that, but if you're a business and you're not paying your people the wage they live in the city you're in, I know, for example, firemen in Santa Barbara need to be in the city, but that's another thing to consider.
That's right, and if you can't afford, if you have trouble affording rent, you may have trouble getting a car, so it'd be more helpful to be someplace where you can walk to where you can go.
Right.
One of the things, and I think we've got to look at this first, affordable housing isn't a standalone. It's only as good as the industries that could hire those people to pay their rent or to live the life that they want and expand to something else. Fishing, forestry's here, but what's their future? If all of a sudden we've got rockfish coming back again, but for 20 years, they purposefully didn't fish rockfish here. And so that went down. What came in? Tiapa. Now they built this back up again. Now you've got canary flounder, or the yellow ones, you've got the orange ones, the parrot ones, and the brown ones. So now we're getting that back again. That may help support this. But I'm thinking we need to go to the industries and say, okay, realistically, what's your future forecast for your business? Now they may not know because Asians, what was that I saw the other night? There's more plastic in the ocean starting at more than fish. And so we're going to see what's topsy-turvy. What if we end up with all this short-term housing, small mini houses? And what are the people going to do if they're gone and you've got these? I mean, what I'm saying is, do we have enough diverse businesses, small baristas, large fishing companies, and others in between to see a viable, growing economic base? We used to have Bumblebee, and look at what we went through. We climbed out of that. We've got a more diverse thing. You've got the Goonies, you've got tourism, you've got a certain amount of diversification now. But there's a couple of questions that I just kind of balance like so many balls, wondering what is our future. One of the other things you're talking about is healthcare. Well, for 45 years, and I oversaw a group, we had 150 different insurances that we saw. Granted, those were dental, but I'll tell you what, reason you don't have Blue Cross here anymore is because you don't have, and I'm talking about an insurance person now, when I'm looking ahead, I'm saying, how does this perspective grow? That slide. What have I got for livability going on? Who am I going to be able to insure? The higher the older ones, the more they're going to cost. The transportation, getting from here to Portland, they're just putting on 5 new buses, I saw the other day, going back to Portland. They'll soon be doing this on a daily basis. So, looking at this, if I'm here running Blue Cross Blue Shield, I'm going to need to look at what's my actuary saying about 5 years, 10 years, what's my growth expense? We had 3,000 people on Blue Cross Blue Shield 4 years ago. They pulled out because they couldn't make money. What have you got? Two here now. You got Humana and healthcare. So it's not a pretty picture if you don't have it. So where does it all start? Here again, it's economies, and what are they? We need to look at more diverse things. Granted, it's forest and fisheries. I don't know what else really that's going to be going, but maybe we'll do have something. Maybe the 30-year-olds that are coming in are going to be working off-site, only on computers, and everything doesn't matter where they live. This is going to be a livable area. We have a tremendously livable area when you think about it. You've got 5,000 miles of ocean, and that's the first air you're breathing when you walk down here.
China's on the other side, unfortunately, but.
It dissipates a little bit. So, anyway, there's a lot of things that I think we've got to consider here. And they're all tied together. It's an interesting web.
I think there are plenty of jobs. I mean, the trouble is, they can't get hired help in the summertime.
Well, look at
There's
this.
a huge push trying to find people for the nurses aid,
They don't pay well enough to afford to
They
live
don't.
here.
Yes, the pay is an issue totally, but it isn't that there's not demand, and a lot of those jobs are going to stay here. It is, but even though the wages aren't the greatest, but the cost of housing is so terrible, and as long as there's the rate of return, if you're going to do a money investment, you put it in a house, you crank up the rent, and you are good to go. And that picture of financial investment in this country is just looming.
They don't pay well enough to live.
No.
You look at our parents did. You know, chances are your father worked, your mother, if she became a school teacher, got paid only a subsistence amount because she really didn't need it. She had your dad's help. And so it's an interesting time we live.
I would like to see something written in about housing that does discourage second homes or vacation rentals in some way.
Vacation rentals, I can see.
Yeah, I don't know what that
You
there's.
have to remember about second homes. This is for the city of Seaside, I don't know if it's the same for other cities. Because of second homes in Seaside, the people who actually live in Seaside do not pay as much for their water and sewer. Because the way that we got the rates in Seaside, it's a base rate for everybody, whether you use this much or you use this much. And so if we start discouraging the second homes, then I'm gonna see a lot of the little ladies having to pay more for their water and their sewer.
But we do see a lot of the houses that are sitting empty that aren't being used for vacation rentals. They're just being used for 2 weeks out of the year by vacationers, and it's not rented out as an Airbnb. That's still a huge problem. That's still a house being, it's an abuse. It's an abuse of a house. Someone can't be living in that.
It's not a problem if you look at their tax structure. 67% of the houses in Gearhart are not owners don't live there full time.
Right.
67, wow. Really?
But then you look at like Manzanita, and the one cafe that was there had to close because they couldn't even find one employee because no one lives in Manzanita.
Full time.
Right.
I was going to say what you were talking about, the business owners pay a livable wage. One thing that's changing in myself, who's going to be personally affected by this, is we're seeing in Astoria, heritage businesses like, heritage businesses like Home Bakery or Danish Made or Columbia Produce, they aged out of their business for whatever reason they're selling. And like my hotel, Canary Hotel, probably within 2 weeks it's going to be sold to a venture capital company. The Holiday Inn has been sold to, outstate. So I mean, we are losing.
Same thing happened with the forest lands.
Community-owned businesses, and it's going to be controlled by outside interests. The same thing with the forests, statewide. The forests are becoming just commodities of international investment firms.
Yep.
Family businesses like Hampton, they're in the minority now. The other thing that I just in a conversation about, we had talked earlier about a data center here in the county. Because we're facing China, if they bring in the high-speed internet, how do we make sure that if they start a high-speed internet or whatever you call it, whatever the things are that they're doing now, how do we say as a community, if you're coming into our area, we want a piece of that? So because some of these things are coming and they're skipping the original community and the benefit goes out there. So how do we capture that benefit? Is there a way to do that? I don't know.
There sure is a way to do that. You know, if I wanted to buy a vineyard in France, I couldn't do it for a lot of years. It was only owned by the French. You look at other places in Mexico, now you go to it's a 99-year lease. You're not owning anything. They're controlling those mortgages. You're paying the rent on that. All it takes is a reworking of our structure. We call ourselves a democracy so that everybody's going to come, is going to get the same chance to own and do this. But when you extend that going into countries and you say, hey, the livability is in the United States, the livability is in the Northwest. In fact, you know, Oregon is really the best state to have that. And so you're finding houses for livability, for clean air, for the enjoyment that people have, as quaint as it can be. But that doesn't turn it into the livable places that are making the money and churning it that we could get here, potentially. So it's reworking the whole system that we have.
You sound so radical, Harold.
I love it.
Another comment regarding the vacation homes. I made a large part of my income on maintaining those homes. And that was as a repair contractor. And those properties employ many people. Most of those folks that have their second home, they don't come down here to do their yard work.
It's true.
That's not why they come here. They employ many in the area.
And building on that, I think, Gerhard, I would venture to say we have at least 20 landscapers. And those houses are maintained.
There aren't that many licensed landscapers.
There's the yards are great. There's the windows are, you know, refitted with new shingles every few years because they didn't get put in right the first time or whatever. But the people go there, you know, in the wintertime, I can walk down South Ocean, North Ocean, and I won't see any lights. I mean, I probably know in those 40 houses, there are probably 8 people.
And that's why it's important to make the difference between second homes and vacation rentals. Because vacation rentals come from a whole different economic aspect. Second homes are second homes. They're somebody's home that they spend some time in. But a lot of those second homes, and I visit a lot of them, they really pay a lot into our property taxes in this county.
And they don't use all
And
services.
that's exactly right.
Well, the majority of them, and I can speak from experience here, don't register to vote, not even rent.
No.
And then they get.
Well, if it's going to be their permanent home to retire, they can.
The other thing,
What, Kathleen? So I want to honor our time commitment today. So we are slated to wrap up at 6:30. Gail, we have a packet in front of us, or most of us that have already gathered it. Any notes that we need to know from that packet?
It's for goal 3. It does not sound, at least the impression I'm getting is that we haven't quite concluded goal 2 yet. So I will, and that's fine. I'll keep goal 2 on next month's agenda as well as starting a discussion of goal 3. September 9th, we have the workshop with Tim Murphy, the Farm Forest Specialist. It's pretty much an all-day event. We're providing lunch. Brochures are there. Please RSVP by August 30th if you'd like to attend.
is it countywide, Gail? Gail, is it countywide?
It's open to the public, so.
I mean, is it another one of these?
No, it's different. It's a workshop. It's not a meeting. It's a workshop where the state's going to come down and talk about what is the overview of goal 3, why do we have a farmland goal, and why do we have a forestry goal.
How is seating set up?
So, okay, hold on.
Is it okay that I come to these tonight?
Yeah, no, you come here.
Come to them.
This one goes in this, I have 2 folders.
Yeah, so you want the purple
Those are the 2
folder.
folders,
I do
yes.
want to ask quickly too, we will allow public comment throughout, but does any member of the public have a final comment you'd like to make? Or any additional? Kathleen, I'll go Kathleen.
I just want to put out there that on the Tillamook housing study, they had a real interesting bit about restricting restricted to housing. But if you build housing, it's understood if you live in that house, you're only going to be, it's only, so it artificially keeps housing low for families. It's a real interesting concept.
I just want to thank you for, this has been super informative and back and forth, and thank you for the opportunity to actually participate.
Thank you all for coming. Any other comments from the committee members?
Good to see you all.
Good to see you all too. I'll just say very briefly, we got a couple minutes. So I spent the weekend at like this crazy meditation thing down in Tidewater. And one of the things that came up when we were doing gratitude meditation was just thinking about this group and this process. And I appreciate you all. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and the trust that the county has put in all of us to help them going forward. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Still love it. Tidewater, kind of narrows it down. And a couple holidays. New Year.
All right.
Cheryl, I would love to come down.
I'm going to declare us.
Yeah, so.
Okay. I wasn't sure. I know, I just started a vote because I didn't know and I didn't want to not.
Robert, I didn't get your comment.
Thank you for coming. Naturalist.
There is a little blue thing there.